requirements management process, in general terms, it's an iterative and incremental process. So there are four main stages that will loop. The first one is the elicitation. Obviously, you have to start somewhere, and you start by eliciting requirements. So you would define what's the scope. As an input, you have the scope of the project. What is it that we want to do? What is it that we don't want to do? That's the most complicated part because we obviously want to do a lot of things, but then we don't have unlimited resources. We don't have a limited budget, time, anything like that. So we have to define the scope. What's the structure that we want to put together for our project? And very importantly as well, what are the different sources for the requirements? Some of them will be stakeholders, some of them will be legislations, etc., etc. And then we loop into documentation, validation and review, and then management of all of that. And this keeps going. So it's not like you elicitate everything at the beginning and then you stop. It's like a process that keeps looping. And then in the end, while you have your requirements traced to their source, to their origin, so that you're able to, well, trace back all of the requirements and also trace them to their verification to make sure they've been implemented correctly. Now, what's interesting is how can this be optimized with the help of artificial intelligence? Because obviously, we're in 2025 now, time is passing super fast, and artificial intelligence is more and more available. We need to, see how we can optimize stuff with it. And so here we've tried to put together some ideas where artificial intelligence can be useful when it comes to requirements engineering or requirements management. So for the elicitation phase, one thing you could do with artificial intelligence is to get a list of standards or regulations or norms that apply to your system. Let's say you're starting a system in the automotive industry, you're working on a specific mechanism that will be integrated as part of the airbag system. I don't know, something specific. You might want to ask the AI, okay, what are the standards that I'm supposed to comply with? And then you could go even deeper, and you could ask, what are the specific chapters, what are the specific requirements from that standard that I should be aware of that in terms of what I have to comply with. So you could do that with AI. You could create an initial outline as well. I'm going to show you how it looks inside Visure. It's pretty cool the way we've done it. You can ask the AI to populate, like literally from scratch, from nothing. You can have the AI create a template for your document. So it'll come with like the chapters, the structure, a bunch of dummy requirements as well for you to get started with. So I'm going to show you how it looks. It's actually done in a nice way. It will also create a list of stakeholders because why not? You want to make sure you're not forgetting anybody that used to be. I'm saying that used to be, but it still is a big challenge when working at the beginning of a project with requirements. You want to make sure you're thinking of all the different stakeholders that are involved or that will be involved with the product that you're building. And then create a glossary of terms because why not? And then in the documentation, we could extract data from unstructured text. This is a request that keeps coming from our users and from the companies we speak with. We've all had to deal one day or another. We all dealt with a big Word document, maybe 100 pages, maybe a couple hundred pages, and then it was just text, like no format. We didn't know what was a requirement, what was context, what we were just, facing this big chunk of text, and then we had to manually read through it and identify the requirements. So AI can definitely help there. And also natural language processing. So we can have this identify for us ambiguities, missing requirements, redundancies, and so on. I'm also going to show you how this works. It's actually very, very interesting the way we've implemented it in Visure. The AI is called Visure Virtual Assistant, because we have to give them a name, right? So that's the name we came up with after fighting internally. So I'm going to show you Vivia as well inside Visure. And then for validation, review, test case generation, we can have the AI analyze through the requirements and then generate test cases to make sure each requirement is verified, generation of any additional assets if needed, generate related requirements and identify traces, find missing traces as well. So that's a very important topic right here. And then prioritization, sorry, of the requirements based on their impact. So that's for the theory. Now I have 5 to 10 minutes to show you a little bit of what it looks like inside Visure. So here I am connected to a Visure web interface. And so for those of you who are not familiar, it's very simple. You have the navigation bar here on the left-hand side, and then you can use it to jump from one section to the other. So in here, I made my way to the document section, which is where I centralize all the different documents I have in my project. I have a big folder full of my requirements, for example. And then from here, I can open any document I want, or I will just open my customer requirements right here. And the first step of that cycle that we were looking at was actually elicitation. So elicitation, you have multiple ways of doing it. One way you could do it is importing a document. Say you were given, or say you have to comply with a standard, you can just take the list of the requirements coming from the standard, or you were given requirements from one of your customers, you have to comply with them. It's fairly easy. You just have to import them into Visure. To do that, you have multiple options. It obviously depends on the format that you will receive the data in. But one thing that we support straight from the web interface is actually importing data from Word and Excel and also from Google Drive, which is new. And so right here, what you could do is actually look for, say, a spreadsheet. Let's see if I have one. This one, for example. There you go. This is a spreadsheet. I have it open right here to show you. It simply contains a bunch of requirements. It happens that this spreadsheet was originally exported from Visure, but it truly doesn't matter. It could be just a spreadsheet created from scratch. It would be the exact same thing for the demo. And so here we see the content of the spreadsheet. We decide where we want to import it. We hit next, and then we can run the import. So the only thing we have to do is to map the columns. So the column that I've called requirement, I'm going to map it to my description. The attributes happen to have the same name, so it's very clear. There's no ambiguity. If they didn't have the same name, it would not be a problem. You could even create new attributes on the fly if you wanted to. And then when you click next, it will compare the content of your spreadsheet with the content of what you have inside your Visure database. Because as I said, those requirements were firstly exported from Visure to Excel. So they exist in the database already. And when we're re-importing them, we're being displayed the status for each one of those requirements. So this first one, for example, 1710, it already exists and it's actually been modified. So the priority that I'm gonna import says low, whereas the old value, I don't know if you guys can read, but it says medium. So we've changed the priority from medium to low inside Excel, and now we're about to re-import that change. And a lot of them are not changed. We have a new requirement right here. So we have like a full understanding of, assuming this is a V2 that we're receiving from our customer after we've worked on V1, then we have an understanding of what they've changed, what they've added, etc., etc. That's one way. Another way, because this is the topic of the webinar, is to actually use AI, right? So what you could do is click right here, and then you could have the AI do a bunch of stuff for you. The first thing you might want to ask is, can you please generate a specification template? And then here you just have to, explain a little bit about what you're doing for the AI to generate a template. So we could say we're doing an airbag, an airbag trigger system for a passenger car to be sold in the EU and US, for example. Obviously, like with anything that has to do with AI, the better the prompt, the better the answers. So you might want to think a little bit longer than I did to come up with a prompt that, encompasses as much information as you think is useful for the AI to work with. In my case, I just want to have a quick example, so I'll just went with something, fairly simple. And there we go. We have all of the chapters of our specification created by the AI. So what's the purpose of our project? What's the scope? Who are the stakeholders that we should go and ask for requirements? What are the standards that we need to comply with? What's the glossary of terms, etc., etc. Obviously, this is a base. I'm not saying that this will do like 100% of the job that a requirement engineer is supposed to do. But instead of starting from scratch and then, scratching your head very hard until you come up with a good idea, you can actually have the AI start from zero and then generate content for you. You will notice that it also has a bunch of requirements right here that were automatically generated. So it shall detect a collision within 10 seconds, shall be capable of differentiating between minor collisions and severe crashes. Okay, so there are a lot of functional, non-functional requirements that were generated here. What we can do is go a step further and actually ask for more. So I'm going to keep the exact same thing. I'm just going to add with at least 30 requirements. There you go. By the way, the AI is currently talking to me in English. You could have it talking obviously any language you want. So if you have an AI that speaks whatever, French, Italian, Turkish, whatever, you can have it. And then there we go. So I've asked for 30 requirements, so it didn't take too long. It should deploy in that many milliseconds. It should work in this temperature range. It should have a failure rate of less than 1 in 1 million, etc., etc. And then some requirements will make more sense than others. So then it's up to you to decide which ones you want to keep and generate them so that they can be added into your documents. And that's just two of the use cases that are available because once you have the requirement generated, you can also have the test cases generated. Because we said, whatever, it should detect the collision within 20 milliseconds, whatever. Then how do we test this? So we can have the AI generate a test case, generate what's the expected result, etc., etc. And we can also have the AI analyzing the quality of a requirement. This use case has proven to be extremely useful for our users, especially for our users that were not necessarily experts in requirements engineering. So they might have, maybe they were new to the topic. So they would firstly write the requirements that they want to add in the project in here. So maybe the system shall log in the user quickly, something like this. So they would firstly run the requirements in here, and then this will actually, give them a feedback. So this requirement lacks specificity and measurability. It does not clearly define what quickly means, etc. So this is pretty obvious. I mean, this was a bad requirement, right? I think we all agree here. But DAI, not only it's capable of telling you that it's not a good requirement, and by the way, it's based on the different, guidelines and standards that you see here. So in Cozy Ears and IRA, not only is capable of telling you that you're doing a bad job, but it's also going to help you. So you can be reassured. It's not going to just blame you. It's also going to try and help you write better requirements. So here it says, well, actually, you should put a number in there. So maybe it's 3 seconds, maybe it's 0.5, maybe it's 10. I don't know. This is up to you to define, but at least you need to have a number in there. And then what if something goes wrong? Maybe you can make the requirement even better. You can actually put in the requirement that there should be an error message if there is anything that goes wrong. So those are the type of things you could do with AI, for the generation side of the requirements, generating test cases, etc. Another useful way that you can leverage AI inside Visure, and that's the part that if you're a current user of Visure, you might not find in your interface, is actually what you see right here, AI Assistant. So here I have a specification about a drone. So you see, I have a bunch of functional requirements, a bunch of non-functional requirements down here probably. So it just, a lot of requirements. And then this AI, unlike the other one that I was showing you right here, this AI has access to your data, to your database. So you want to be careful with what LLM you put, because if you're in China, you don't want to put OpenAI, and then vice versa. If you're in the US, you don't want to put DeepSeek. But this actually has access to your data. It's called Vivia. Like I said, we have to give them a name, so it's called Vivia. It's an experienced system engineer. And for this demo, because it's a drone, let me try to zoom in a little bit for you. Okay, that's better. We decided to tell that the AI should have an aerospace background. And then you can ask whatever you want. So you can just say hello, you can ask, okay, what can you do? And then the AI will tell you, I can help you with this, I can help you with that, etc. And then you see in preparation for today's webinar, I was having some fun asking some questions. So I was asking to analyze the requirements for inconsistencies. Okay, so well, it's going to tell me what it can do. Okay, perfect. So I was asking for inconsistencies, and then it was able to point me to, well, you have ambiguity. Like, for example, this requirement should have a communication range of at least blah blah. This could be more specific about the conditions under which this range is expected, which is a fair point. I didn't think about it. So then it's good that the AI pointed out. And then it will suggest stuff for improvement, but I wanted it to be more specific. So then I asked, can you point me to some specific codes or IDs where I have inconsistencies? And then the drone shall have a minimum flight time of 3 hours. Consider specifying the conditions, blah, blah, blah. So you can ask pretty much anything you want. You could even ask, like, I have to comply with DO-178. What do you think I'm missing currently in terms of requirements that would prevent me from getting DO-178 certified? So you can ask pretty much whatever you want to Vivia. Here's all the different things it can do. So, of course, quality review, requirement documentation, etc., etc. So it's very useful. It's kind of the senior colleague you dream you could have, that you could ask all of your questions to. It's always available. It's never in a meeting or anything. It's just always here for you. You can ask all the questions you want, and then you can progress very, very fast and also get feedback very, very fast. I obviously didn't mention a lot of features that exist in Visure that are not necessarily AI powered. And one that I will mention very, very quickly is traceability, because in the first place, a tool like ours, we exist for many different purposes, but one of them, probably the most important, being traceability. How do we keep track of the requirements and their verification procedures and the test results and all of that? So in Visure, there are different ways that you can visualize traceability. Actually, I want to switch to the list view. So far, we've been looking at a document view. This is our list view. And then from here, one thing that you can do is visualize the traceability. So you can see that our product requirement right here, PR60, it's linked to what we call a global parameter, which is the weight of the system. So I won't get into the details of how this works, but it's basically a variable that is being used in the requirement. And then downstream, we can see that it's connected to a system requirement, to actually 3 system requirements, and to a product review right here. So we can have a full understanding of what is the traceability for that element PR60 right here. And that requirement could be also linked to a test. And that's where I'm going to leave the floor to you, Antoine. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. There you go. And you'll be able to see how requirements coming from Visure can be tested automatically in Rapid Yep.
Thank you very much. Yes, so we'll take it over from there to explain a little bit how all this traceability is going through some other tools and then back into Visure. Louis will be coming back at the end of the webinar to show you the how we close the loop. Now, Anna-Ruth is going to show you a quick demonstration of Rapid and specifically the way it's working, extracting data from Visure, performing its work, which is automation of test running and gathering data, and as well as sending the information back to Visure to close that loop, making sure that we've got continuous traceability thread through these 2 sets of tools. That's one of the important things that we deliver through partnerships like this one with Visure.
So here we are in Rapid. What we're going to want to do is read some requirement codes from Visure, link them to tests in Rapid, and then run our tests and send the results back into Visure, hopefully. So we have a test here. We have some Visure test cases, and we could, in theory, copy and paste these codes over into Rapid, but it would be better if we could pull them in automatically. So we currently have this Rapid project integrated with Visure, which means if we hit the prepare button, it's going to pull the Visure codes down. You can set it up to pull whatever kinds of codes you want. For the sake of this particular demonstration, we've got it pulling test case runs directly, but you could have it pull test cases and then push the test runs, however your Visure project is set up. That's just running the requirements linker right now. And so if we double check, we're looking for the codes RT test 1, 2, and 3. There we go. That should be almost done. And it's done. Now we can head into our RBS test format. We have two options here. We can attach a requirement to this whole test page by selecting from this list. But for this demonstration, what we're going to want to do is I'd rather have a test case per individual test vector. So we are going to head to the palette and there it is, add a requirements section. I can then go to each of these fields and there we go. It will fill out a drop menu for me. Come on, there we go. And I can fill these out very easily. Just go along, fill them in. This test is now linked to our Visure test cases. We can run the test, have it build the test. We're only going to build the 3 we want to link. Report, build run report. All right, there we go. So that's all building and running now. Just check I still have my connection. There we go. It's waiting currently for the test statuses. These are all building and running. There we go. We have generated a rapid test report here. We can check the results. We can see we're expecting to see a pass, a fail, and a pass inside Visure. But we haven't sent it yet. It's not arrived. Now we go back to our integration. We're now going to hit export. And I've set this up earlier. So if I hit export, we have various exports you can have out to a text format. Things like, what's it called, JUnit and stuff. But in this case, we're just exporting to Visure. And here it goes. Exporting, done. And now if we refresh, we've got our rapid test results all automatically filled out. This is also possible if you're an existing customer and you're thinking, what about the spreadsheet format? Is also possible. Here we've got a requirements field. This is connected to a different project. So you can attach it either to a whole test table or to individual vectors by filling in these other fields. And I'm now going to pass back to Louis, who's going to show us how that links into the traceability matrix, I believe.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks a lot. So I'll quickly show you, now that we have the results back in Visure, then what interesting things we can do from here. So let me just maybe do a quick refresh as well, so I make sure I'm still connected, all good. So if I go in here in the test plans, just to double check. There you go. This is where we reported back the test results. Yeah, so I do need to make a quick refresh. What we're going to be trying to do from here is, now that we have our test results, how do we, for example, prove like end-to-end traceability? And well, the obvious answer to that question is, okay, perfect. So we have all of this here. The obvious answer to that question is going to be a trace matrix. So like we've seen earlier, you can see traceability in the form of a diagram. We haven't seen it, but you can see traceability in many different ways. Could be like a tree format, could be just simple arrows. So there are a lot of ways to see traceability, but then one that is very general is the traceability matrix. So right here, I have a pre-saved configuration, so that's why you see I don't really need to touch anything. It's just displaying all the columns that I've pre-configured by itself. But well, the first time you create a matrix, you basically want to select all the columns that should be displayed. So in my case, I'm following a very classic V cycle with the product requirements, the system, and the component requirements, and then the test results here on the last column on the right hand side. And there we go. For example, here, this is one of the test runs coming from Rapita. And then you see that the test failed. And so when we click it, then in blue, it will highlight everything that's impacted. So, well, this test case was executed twice, and then we have a result that passes, and then another one that failed. And so we can see, okay, that impacts that software requirement 10, which, by the way, we could open in a separate tab if we're curious to learn more about what software rec 10. Well, in this case, I would need to log in again, make sure I have access, but you could open it in a separate tab. The system requirement 60 as well is impacted all the way up to my product requirement 60 right here. So this is really what we call end-to-end traceability. Companies not using a requirement management tool, that's one of the biggest pain points because it takes a lot of time to produce that in Excel. The beauty is in Visure, not only you can generate it super quickly. Well, sorry about that. Looks like I timed out earlier. I'll log back in real quick. Not only you can generate it, but you can also export it in one click. So if you need to share this traceability matrix with your auditor or with anybody that's potentially outside of the company might not have access to Visure, you can just generate it in here. If the person has access to Visure, it's perfect. If they don't, you just click here. That will generate, an Excel spreadsheet, and then you can share this with them directly. So it's fairly easy, and it makes sense to go all the way down to the test status. You could also go all the way down to the source code. For example, if you are looking to see what your software requirements are linked to in the source code, this is also something you could do right here in the traceability matrix. That's it. I don't want to take too much more of the time we have left. We could also do analysis like, what are all the field tests we have in our project and then what do they impact? We can do that right here in Visure. It's really interesting if you're curious to learn more about this. Happy to have like a demo specific for you. There are a lot of things even in the dashboards that we can see how the tests have an impact on the rest of the project, what's the coverage, etc. So there are plenty of other topics really interesting, but we'll just leave it to this for now. Good.
So first one, what is the level of confidence we have on some random data generated by AI? A question for Louis, I think.
Yes, absolutely. So that's a good question, and I would say it really much depends on what LLM you're using. So one thing that we had a couple of questions in the Q&A. I tried to answer them quickly by writing. You can plug any LLM you want with Vivia. So you could be OpenAI, could be Llama, could be DeepSeek, could be literally any LLM you want. We have some customers using their own LLM that they've deployed on their premises with Vivia. So the answers you'll get from the AI will depend on the LLM you're using. If you're training it with your data, you'll get more specific answers. If it's just something that's open to the internet, it's going to have very broad answers.
Is there an on-premise version for classified projects?
Absolutely. Everything can be deployed on premise. Yes.
Okay. One for Rapita. Is the Rapitest qualified tool for all DALE levels specified by DO-178C?
Yep, absolutely. It goes up to DAL A and been used many, many times by our customers for this DAL level, actually.
Okay. Question for Louis. Can Visure identify conflicting requirements?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the AI Vivia, it absolutely can do that. So we'll tell you, like earlier, I think I had an example. A requirement was saying the maximum altitude should be 100 meters, and then a requirement further down the document was saying the altitude should be whatever 500 feet. And not only would be a unit issue, but also if you convert the actual values, they would not match. So yes, it can identify this kind of things. Absolutely.
Okay. Since the AI is non-deterministic, how easy or hard is it to navigate the certification path per DO-178C?
That's a good question. It's a very tough question. Um, I think AI should be used as a tool, as part of a toolbox, and it's not going to do the whole thing. It's more like an accelerator. It's going to do a lot of stuff way quicker, way faster than any engineer would. It might not do it like perfectly well, at least not from the first time. So it will still require someone to supervise everything. It will make the whole path towards certification quicker, faster, easier, but you'll still need to have someone review what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, and you'll still need to work with the DER and that type of things. Yeah.
Is Rapitest to qualify? Oh, I've read that one. What is the difference between Rapitest and Cantata?
Oh, wow. There's quite a few differences between Raptest and Cantata. Well, one of the main one is Cantata doesn't really support ADA for a lot of the tool that RVS does support. I would say that RVS is more dedicated to the DO-178 market, where Cantata is more of a generic tool for many markets. So for a lot of the systems, especially the real-time embedded systems where a lot of with tight deadlines and sometimes tight resources, it's usually a lot easier to deploy an RVS solution because of that, because it's been designed from the beginning for that market exactly. But yeah, they are similar tools in general in terms of with the type of services that they deliver. Just as I say, we are more focused on the avionics market than Cantata.
Thanks, Antoine. Is it possible to integrate LLM solutions for the requirements review as pull request? How you can make sure that LLM provide the qualitative review without hallucinations?
That's a tough one. So again, you can integrate any LLM you want. So you can decide if you want to have like an LLM that's trained specifically for a given industry with your historical data, and so on. Um, AI models are becoming more and more reliable. We at Visure haven't figured out how we can stop AI models from having hallucinations altogether. But I think a lot of it is in the way we prompt. So what we're doing with VVI is basically a lot of prompt engineering. So not only we interface between Visure and model, the LLM, but we also massage a little bit the prompt that you guys are putting into VVI so that what the request we're sending to the AI language model actually is provided with some background in terms of you should follow that document and you should pay attention to this and you should when you answer you should pretend you're an experienced software engineer or system engineer, etc. So there's a lot that has to do with the prompt engineering behind Vivia, to make sure there's no hallucination. So far we haven't encountered anything crazy. It might be that instead of 10 milliseconds should be 15. Those are numbers that you guys should review. As we said, it's non-deterministic, so it's always to be reviewed by someone who has experience. But overall, it's never told us like the airbag should deploy at any moment just for fun. So yeah, I think we're at a point where it's pretty reliable.
Okay. Thank you, Louis. Is Rapitest also qualifiable for space standards of NASA and ECSS?
Yes, it is. So all the tools, all the RVS tools are qualifiable, and the core kit is made according to DO-330. It's TQL5, tool qualification level 5 for these tools. So the tools themselves do produce results which are compatible with the standards, which I'll try to remember, is the NASA NPR 7150 and the European one, I think it's ST40C or something like that. So there's two standards, which are supported, and they are slightly different in terms of the type of results that you have to produce, especially for coverage. So there are specific versions of the tool, basically, which are producing exactly the data in the format required by these two standards. And yes, the qualification kit does apply.
Thank you, Antoine. Question for Louis. There are many new LLMs all of the time. Do you recommend specific LLMs for a given industry or application?
That's a good one as well. I think OpenAI has proven to work like a treat, really. I mean, we were surprised a few months ago when we started working with it. We were able to compile specifications, test procedures, everything for any product that you can imagine. Just having absolutely zero experience, you can just compile like you could start building tomorrow. So OpenAI is working like a treat. I think we have a bunch of partners and customers that deployed Llama, sometimes even on premise, and this has worked also very well. I I personally don't have a lot of feedback from any others, so I don't want to say anything wrong, but those two are for sure working well.
Thank you, Louis. What is the scope that Rapitest covers? Is it only applications or in a broader sense also SCS, Zen-based VMs? Question for Antoine.
So yeah, it is very much on the application, but this application can be running as part of the testing on top of any RTOS or as I say, several RTOSs inside an hypervisor, for example. So it is very much the testing of the application. Now, if you do have the source code for your OS, which normally you do in our market, your source code for the application, sorry, for the OS is also part of the application in a sense. So you can do testing that goes right down to the lower level of the OS if you want to. I spotted there was a question about testing interrupt handlers as well. Yeah, this is very similar. Yes, it's possible. We can test multi-threaded system. Interrupts are just another type of thread in that model. We also have ways of testing things like race conditions and things like that as part of the type of system level or integration level testing that you might want to do.
Thanks, Antoine. Referring to INCOSE, isn't it that LLMs required which were trained with in-course data? If so, does it limit the selection of proper LLMs?
Um, that's interesting. So it's actually OpenAI knows a ton about Incosi because I guess a lot of Incosi data is online. So no, in general, you could ask like ChatGPT, for example, to correct your requirement with following Incosi guidelines, and it will do a very, very decent job at it. So we've had, even us at Visure, we've had a number of presentations and webinars on what are the guidelines from Incosi. A requirement should be unique, should be unambiguous, it should be this, it should be that. So all of that is available, on the web. So OpenAI has access to it, and it's absolutely capable of guiding the users following Incosi practices.
I'm glad you pronounced that properly, Louis. Another question for on requirements. Do we need to embed the requirement item numbers in the source code or a proxy table?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Do we need to embed the requirements item numbers in the source code or in a proxy
Oh,
table?
uh, both would work. If you have a proxy table, it's gonna work. We typically embed the requirement code, like the ID of the requirement, as a comment inside your source code, and then we have a parser that will identify this, the code of the requirement that's being covered, and link it back to the requirement automatically. So if you're importing source code into Visure and you happen to have the source code, the requirement ID as a comment in your source code, it's going to create the traceability for you in the same operation. So it's just like a two operations in one kind of things, import and traceability creation.